cut in there. So you got a sense of the building. Let me tell you a little bit about the building itself. This building was constructed between roughly 1895, 1897. It opened in 1896, but they were still doing construction. The building itself was built specifically to generate electricity for trolley cars. It was not built for electricity for homes or businesses. That was a side that just created, it happened as they were building it. They had access to the Edison 3-wire platform, and they were going to use that for electrifying the trolley cars. At that time, Toledo had several trolley car companies. Most of them were horse-drawn, and they were moving to this new system. You got to remember that Toledo was on the verge of this industrial kind of explosion that was starting to occur, and trolley cars were one way people were getting back and forth to work. So they were hugely important to the development of Toledo. And so they were willing to spend the kind of money that was needed to build a building like this to house an electrical plant so that they could get the electricity out to those trolley cars. The company that actually put that together, it's kind of interesting. Today we know this is the Toledo Edison steam plant. Originally this was known as Water Street Station, along Water Street. And it was part of Toledo Traction Company, which engaged the firm of Daniel Burnham. Daniel Burnham was world-renowned as an architect. He was responsible for designing the World's Fair in Chicago. He designed a number of really famous buildings in the United States, including the Flatiron Building in New York City. Burnham designed this with a Romanesque architecture that you see, particularly on the facade facing Water Street. That particular facade was part of the program that Medica followed with the state on historical facade grants. So that had to stay exactly as is, and we'll go out there a little bit later and show you that. But what's interesting is the building itself originally had 11 arcaded columns or arches, and then they did 6 expansions. The minute this building opened, it was behind the program of electricity, because it's just as they open, the whole use for electricity explodes. Willie's moves to town, Libby needs electricity, all the other major industries, and this little plant was all there was to try to keep up with that. So they were constantly expanding, bringing in new turbines, and trying to keep up with the requirements of this city that was literally just growing in leaps and bounds with this newfound technology. By the end of, roughly by the end of World War I, around 1920, the money's gathered together. The traction company and all the other trolley companies had come together and formed Toledo Edison. Toledo Edison was formed from trolley car companies. And they formed Toledo Edison, and they built the Acme plant on the other side of the river that was just knocked down probably about 2 or 3 years ago near the National Museum for the Great Lakes. And the Acme plant basically takes on the role of powering Toledo's industry and homes. In 1930, this facility was no longer known as Water Street Station. It was converted to a steam plant. And the steam plant technology was something that was kind of invented here in Toledo. And it was basically using the turbines to develop steam heat and push that steam out to about 400 buildings around the downtown area. So it was hotels, theaters, and buildings depended on that heat for several decades until eventually things changed. Modern HVAC equipment came around, and that was no longer needed. The building itself was basically mothballed around in the mid-1980s. Toledo Edison actually had to submit a affidavit to PUCO and basically say, we've lost money on the building for the last 6 years. We'd like to close it. They got permission. It was closed. Several different ideas were generated about what to do to the building. I'm a former board member of the Valentine Theater. You may be surprised to know that at one time the Toledo Cultural Arts Center thought about moving in here and making this the home of all cultural arts. They spent a lot of money on drawings. They could never get it to work because of sight lines, because of all the different poles and things that are inside the building. But eventually ProMedica comes to the rescue of the steam plant. And as you can see as we go through here, they did it right. They spent a lot of time thinking about how they were going to fit their people down here, make it workable with a large footprint. As I said, when you were in that open area, the entire building was open like that at one point. They brought in the cement and the steel and put the 4 floors in. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to take a little bit of a walk down this hallway, and I want to just again demonstrate for you ProMedica's effort to focus on the history. This is referred to as the history corridor, and this was I worked with the Toledo History Museum. We were engaged to build this. This took about 6 months of research, and it tells the story of Toledo from the 1700s all the way to modern day, particularly downtown, in a 126-foot long corridor that has these glass etched pieces. So we're going to just take a few minutes, walk that way, and then we're actually going to go outside and we'll continue the rest of the tour on the outside of the building. There's a lot to see. You won't see it all in one day here, but I want to give you an idea of what it is. And there's also some artifacts as you walk down this hallway affiliated with Toledo Edison, including things like this and some signage. So we'll just take a few minutes and we'll head down this hallway.